This video is an analysis of Kubrick as an auteur of film, focusing on his use of diegetic sound and non-diegetic music to complement his most iconic moments and join juxtaposed images together in relation to rhythm, emotional manipulation, spatial interpretation, and the voice of the unseen or inanimate object.
What about room 237?
In Kubrick's horror, The Shining, there are two opposing uses of sound to give the illusion of inanimate objects listening or speaking. As Dick Holloway speaks to Danny in the kitchen of the Overlook Hotel, the words reverberate, giving the impression of the walls listening.
Mr. Allen, what is in room 237?
This is mirrored in the scene where Danny meets the Grady twins for the second time. They beckon him to play with them forever. This is repeated 3 times, obeying the rule of 3, a rule used in religion and mythology, making the scene more effective and also giving rhythm to juxtaposed shots of the twins standing, then slaughtered in flash cuts. The bass of the twins' voices are amplified and give the impression of the hotel speaking.
Hello, Danny. Come and play with us. Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever.
Sound is also a medium which can be manipulated to achieve emotional conflict in the viewer. When Jack chases Danny through the maze, we are caught, siding ourselves with Danny's point of view, as this is where the story has led us thus far, bearing all of Danny's thoughts and emotions, visions and sounds to the viewer while keeping most of Jack's hidden. The audience is therefore forced to travel in Danny's shoes as he trudges through the snow. His footsteps are light, quick, and higher in pitch, making them innocent and fearful. This is in contrast to Jack's heavy, deep, slow, relentless marching and breathing and consistent beckoning to Danny. It is reminiscent of other horror genre antagonists such as Michael Myers and that of Freddy Krueger.
Well, he went a little funny in the head. You know, just a little funny. And
Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, is a dialogue-driven film, and so Kubrick respects this fact. This is especially apparent in the war room, where no musical score plays through the scene, so that the voices are clear and lost within a large room. We can understand the size and hardness of the materials of the room by the way the voices reverberate, insinuating that again the room is listening. It is during the phone conversation between the American president and his Russian counterpart that Kubrick plays with the audience's participation to achieve comedic effect. In this conversation, Kubrick uses what is known as Type 2 way of portraying a telephone conversation on screen, staying with character A for the duration while subsequently not allowing the audience to hear character B's voice. The audience's participation is removed to a larger extent when everyone else in the war room is listening on headphones, leaving only the audience to guess what is said by the Russian president, heightening the humour of this satirical scene.
I am positive, Dmitri. Listen, I've been all over this with your ambassador. It is not a trick.
To consider the proper use of diegetic sound and its fundamental role in the aesthetics of cinema, Richard Davis argues it as being a spatial compensation for the 2-dimensional picture to give the illusion of 3 dimensions. It is in 2001 A Space Odyssey, arguably Kubrick's most ambitious and ambiguous work, where he takes advantage of the use of selective sound to give the accurate spatial representation of the vacuum of space, an environment where sound has no medium through which to travel. Kubrick expresses the extremeness of this idea by breaking film tradition and removing all ambient sound during the murder of crew member Frank Poole. This, however, is different from the explosion of the Death Star, which gives dramatic conclusions to pervading battle of an action film and works effectively, although scientifically flawed. However, in 2001 A Space Odyssey, Kubrick chooses in favour of the rarity of sound, and often relies on characters breathing inside a spacesuit to give a claustrophobic interpretation to the agoraphobic environmental emotion caused by the abyss of space. This is combined with the ambience of gas escaping, which heightens the unsettling and panicked atmosphere. The heavy breathing again gives the rhythm to this scene, much like a heartbeat will in a horror film, where it speeds up accordingly to suit the situation. This leaves the viewer trapped inside a vulnerable bubble, helpless and to some extent lost. In relation to non-diegetic music, even early silent films such as Viaje a la Luna were accompanied by musical score. On narrative film music, Erwin Baislon described the use of music in early cinema as the panacea for encouraging an audience's empathy, often using dramatic melodies to fill any and all situations to lessen the fear of silence. Music, when used with consideration, can be as memorable as the picture it accompanies. An audience will remember the high-pitched violins of Hitchcock's Psycho, just as they remember the knife attack in the shower. This is because sound and music represent the atmosphere of a scene, and true authorship must consider this. As Kubrick states, "I think music is one of the most effective ways of preparing an audience and reinforcing points that you wish to impose on it. The correct use of music, and this includes the non-use of music, is one of the greatest weapons that the filmmaker has at his disposal." In A Clockwork Orange, Kubrick decided in favour of synthesised music to portray the futurism of his neo-gangland dystopia. This was in direct conflict with his choice not to use it in 2001 A Space Odyssey because of synthesised music's ability to become quickly outdated. Kubrick employed synthesised music for the theme and title sequence of his film. This music sets the tone of the film, letting the audience know that it is breaking the tradition of musical scores. In contradiction to this, Tristan Kerry argues that electronic music is not special in any way, merely one of the valid methods of composing and realising music. In this iconic torture chair scene, Wendy Carlos synthesised Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Fourth Movement, a march from A Clockwork Orange, and Kubrick used it juxtaposed to the pictures shown. What is heard is a light-hearted electronic manifestation of the familiar marching melody, constructed with pictures of Nazi rallies, bomber planes and ultra-violence to create an unsettling, surreal atmosphere. The scene then cuts to Alex's point of view, with his inner monologue commentary trapping the viewer inside the murderer's head.
It was the next day, brothers, and I had truly done my best morning and afternoon to play it their way, and sit like a horror show cooperative malchick in the chair of torture.
You are invited!
Kubrick also uses music to emphasise the pace of a scene and set rhythm to it. For instance, Monte Croce's synthesised take on Rossini's William Tell Overture is a fast-paced melody closely associated with a horse galloping. This music is accompanied by an erotic scene involving the protagonist with two females. Kubrick's humour is shown in his courage to break such a tradition of constructing sex scenes to slow music to depict a loving embrace. Instead, he succeeds in its rapid pace to reinforce the notion that this sex is meaningless, quick and easy. Whereas, in 2001 A Space Odyssey, Kubrick chose in favour of classical music as opposed to synthesised, for its timeless qualities, knowing that such electronic music can become obsolete with new methods as synthesisation becoming apparent. To match the juxtaposed scenes of the primitive ape-man throwing man's first tool skywards with that of futuristic space travel, Kubrick used Johann Strauss's second slow waltz, the Blue Danube, which, when used in tandem with the slow-motion picture, effectively achieves an elegant transition, although the apparent jump in time of linear narrative accounts to many millennia. As K.J. Donnelly states, the beginning of a new selection of music typically also initiates a new phase in the presentation of images. Richard Strauss's Also sprach Zarathustra was also used twice in the soundtrack of 2001: A Space Odyssey. The use of this music twice highlights the contrasts and similarities between the two scenes. In the first, we see a primitive being accomplish one of our species' greatest feats, the creation of tools, which also led to hunting over foraging, given the nourishment needed for intellectual evolution. Whereas, in the penultimate scene, we see an accelerated aging Dave who then evolves in the final scene into the Star Child, an image of innocence, divine omniscience, and complemented by the dramatic drums and brass orchestra of Also sprach Zarathustra to illustrate the great boundaries broken by this detachment from humanity. In these examples, Kubrick uses non-diegetic music to encapsulate the audience, set tone and atmosphere, while keeping the pace and rhythm of the scene clear to the audience. Kubrick, in mastering authorship of his films, uses diegetic sounds to build a three-dimensional spatial awareness of the two-dimensional picture, even if it is that of a claustrophobic environment or an environment devoid of sound. He uses it to manipulate emotions, timing the rhythm to achieve humour or even horror. These elements of his films are chosen and crafted with the great consideration of the auteur, and have in many cases added to the debates which surround his films.